I'm your host, John Kramer. This is my guest, Ryan Hamilton, and you're watching The Star Wars Generation. You're watching episode 3 of The Star Wars Generation, where we talk about what it was like to grow up Star Wars. So Ryan, before we begin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have been a Star Wars fan as long as I can remember. I have to admit, I did not see what I knew as Star Wars in the movie theater. I was.
You were old enough to.
I was 3.
Yeah.
So,
Which
so
is old enough too.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I could have, but the first one that I saw in the movie theater was Empire Strikes Back. We can probably get into this later, but I saw Star Wars on basically a black market copy when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I would imagine. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a mental health therapist. Anyway, that's kind of my life. We grew up in the same neighborhood.
Just mere houses away.
Exactly. So we spent, especially in the summertime, most every day together.
I would say absolutely.
Right.
I don't ever remember not knowing you.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I would agree. I think that you were one of the first friends that I ever knew of.
So anyway, you and I have lots of memories together, whether it's Star Wars or
all kinds of things.
Okay, so before we get too far into this, I'm going to ask you a trivia question.
Okay.
If you know the answer, just hold off. But if you don't, ultimately we will get to the answer.
Okay.
So the question I have to ask is, what 2 actors from the Star Wars film franchise appeared in over 20 films together?
I have a guess.
Okay, well, hold off on the guess and we'll find out, okay?
Okay.
We'll let our viewers figure something. We'll let them ponder it for the next little bit.
I actually have a guess of two or 3, so we'll see.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Anyway,
Yeah.
hold on to that. You hold on to that. So, you were talking about a bootleg copy of Star Wars.
Right.
I remember a bootleg copy of Return of the Jedi. Did you also have a bootleg copy of Return of the Jedi?
Possibly.
Do you have any? See, because I remember, of course my dream always was, to have a marathon, to watch all 3 movies, which ultimately we did. But I remember when you said you had the bootleg copy and I was so excited. I remember that we watched it and it was just static and you just couldn't see, it was not...
It would fade from light to dark.
Yeah.
It was awful.
So, how did you get bootleg copies of Star Wars or Return? Because that's what I remember. It looked like it was just filmed in the movie theater.
Yeah. I don't know for sure. I seem to have some recollection that my uncle, my dad's brother, had a copy, and I'm not sure if it was him that filmed it or how he got it for us. So I think he had a copy, and then he made copies for our family and then for my dad's other brother and his family as well. So yeah, the first version of Star Wars that I saw was pretty crappy. Just the picture quality, and the sound. In fact, I can remember, even going back and watching now, the scene where the droids are in the sandcrawler and just how dark it is.
Oh yeah.
In there, in this bootleg copy, it was nearly impossible to see anything at all.
Whatever I saw, if you had a Return of the Jedi one, I remember a very similar thing of it was just dark, staticky, in and out.
But I think also something to remember about that time, it took forever for movies to come from the movie theater to then coming out on tape. It's not anything like it is today.
It's not at all.
It comes out of the movie theater and, a few weeks later, maybe...
Bill, you can count it in weeks. It can totally be counted in weeks.
It was... I don't know. I'm just guessing now, but I'm guessing it was months. Maybe even 6 months or so before it came out.
It was years, actually, because I happen to know Return of the Jedi came out in '83. It wasn't until '86 that it came out on video.
That's awful.
Yeah, well, because I could go on forever about this, but first off, let's talk about how this was even before home video. Was when Star Wars came out.
Right.
Because Star Wars, it came out in theaters, in 77, pardon me, and it ran for a year. A year. First off, that movie runs for a year, and then it started its second showing in the theater, like the next day, and then showed for who knows how much longer.
Wow.
And then, they'd stop, and then they'd come back in theaters.
Right.
Because that's when, right before Empire Strikes Back came out, it came back into theaters, and that's when they changed the opening crawl to say Episode 4.
A New Hope.
Yeah. Okay. And then the same thing happened with Empire Strikes Back. Before Return of the Jedi, they released it in theaters again.
Okay.
But even when it was available on home video, it cost $90.
Thus the bootleg.
Oh yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Once again, this was, you were one of the first I knew who had a VCR.
Right.
There was, we didn't get one for quite some. I say quite some time. I have no idea. When you're a kid, what could be months seems like years. But I swear we didn't get it for a long time. But we didn't have a microwave oven for a long time.
But you had a Fry Daddy.
But we did have a Fry Daddy. Very good. We could make French fries.
Right.
I just couldn't heat them up the next day.
Right.
Yeah. But you had a microwave. I remember that pretty early.
Yes,
you had a VCR. You had cable.
We had cable.
Yeah.
There were a few other families in our neighborhood that had that as well. But yeah, I would agree. Our family was one of the first with those conveniences and accessories.
And as a result, that kind of made your house a movie hangout.
I would agree. And
that's I actually have a lot of memories of your house of watching movies. And I know we're talking Star Wars here, but I'm going to veer for a second because, if I actually had to say what do I think of more? When I of course I think of Star Wars, but I almost feel like I think of horror movies more when I think of you.
Okay.
Because I have so many memories of watching those horror movies in your basement. You had a whole movie selection of recorded off cable. So we would then watch lots of our movies in your basement.
Right.
And so, like I say, I remember watching Poltergeist. I remember watching Twilight Zone, the movie.
Oh, God.
I can actually scare myself still.
Yeah.
If I think about that opening scene.
With Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. You want to see something really scary?
What's his name? Albert Brooks.
There we go. Yeah, they're just driving in the car.
There were a lot of shows that were like that at the time. Because there was the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
But then there was also a Creep Show.
Oh, that's right. It was segments of scary things. That's right.
And then Cat's Eye, which was
I forgot about that one too. With Drew Barrymore, but also plenty of others because it was the different. I totally forgot about that.
It was the shorter stories, and oftentimes they had like a common thread between them. Obviously, with Cat's Eye, there was the cat that was the common thread between the stories.
I totally forgot about that.
And kind of an interesting time. As far as those shorter horror films, and going back to Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, well, that's something I was going to bring up.
The same way.
Because I'm not talking about the movie Tales from the Crypt. We're talking about the TV series on HBO.
The HBO series,
which I would watch constantly at your house.
Yeah.
I remember I would walk home from your house scared all the time. And we didn't live far away.
No.
But we have to walk past,
but there was a field,
bushes and
there was
everything.
a field and bushes that you would have to pass. And even going from your house or from some of our other friends' homes to my house, it was very much the same way. I hated going by that field.
Absolutely.
And those bushes
Very
for fear
scary.
of,
Well, because what wouldn't be living in there?
Right. Yeah.
So I totally have memories of horror with you. But now I have a question. Do you remember watching Thriller Theater?
Thriller Theater.
And what that was, it wasn't a movie. It was a TV horror show. It came on Saturday afternoons. And
Saturday afternoons?
It was Saturday afternoons. Really, this was a long, long time ago.
I remember, the midnight movies.
And this is pretty much what they were, but they were showing it on Saturday afternoons.
And were they shows that were created for this TV
No, they were
show,
actual horror movies. They were horror movies just showing old horror movies.
It doesn't come to my mind right away.
It was a long, long time ago. But one reason I bring it up is because, the movies they would show, a lot of the time were the Hammer horror movies.
Okay.
And so, with Peter Cushing,
and
Christopher Lee.
Yes.
Okay, so now, what was your guess to my trivia question?
My first guess was Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Well, you're exactly right.
Okay.
That's who it was.
Interesting.
And I realized that they were in two, Christopher Lee was in the prequels and Peter
Right.
Cushing, but still, nonetheless, it was the film series.
Mhm.
But I remember, I loved those movies. I don't know if you've watched many of them since or how you...
Depends on how much you want me to go into it. No, so every year, starting the end of September, I start watching classic horror films.
That's funny. Sounds like this house.
And
I probably owe that to you from
That's
just
funny.
our childhood.
and so I generally watch as many Vincent Price movies as I can. And with that, there's one that's called Madhouse. It's one of the later ones that Vincent Price was in, and Peter Cushing is in it as well. And so that's what led me down the path of, well, it's probably Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee as far as the films that they've been in before. Christopher Lee, he was Hammer Films.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
but of course, I still say the same thing of Peter Cushing. That was just...
Right. For me, that's what I think of as Christopher Lee and Hammer Films. But yeah, so Vincent Price, obviously, not Star Wars related, but certainly iconic as far as the horror film.
Well, the
genre
voice alone
Oh,
is iconic.
Yeah.
Because whilst did Michael Jackson ask him to do Thriller, whilst did Iron Maiden
right.
ask him to do Number of the Beast. Yeah,
Right.
Because just the voice alone
Right.
was creepy.
Oh, for sure. And so movies like Theater of Blood, The Abominable Dr. Fives.
Of course.
Is very...
Oh, it's lousy, but
right.
There's something fun about it.
And then all of the Edgar Allan Poe films that they put together.
That Roger Corman directed.
Right.
Yeah.
The Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah.
All those are certainly classics. So yeah, that's part of my routine.
Oh, absolutely, for me too.
Is to watch those films.
In fact, if I don't fit all of them in, then I'm let down.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Halloween comes and I'm thinking, I didn't see Black Sabbath this year, or The Black Sleep, or,
Oh, absolutely.
some of those great ones.
All right, so I'm going to go back to the Hammer films here for a minute.
Okay.
So, Peter Cushing, and now, prior to this, of course, Christopher Lee had not been in any Star Wars movies.
Not until the prequels.
So at this point in time, we just kind of knew that Peter Cushing, that Grand Moff Tarkin was in these movies. And just to give our viewers a little bit of a background, Peter Cushing, he'd be Dr. Frankenstein, while Christopher Lee would be Frankenstein's monster. Or he would be Van Helsing to Christopher Lee's Dracula, and so on, things like that. And they wouldn't always be in the same movies together, but they were often in the films together.
Right.
And anytime there was a Dracula movie, pretty much Christopher Lee always just played Dracula.
Right.
Or anytime...
That was how I first knew Christopher Lee. It was from Dracula.
Absolutely.
At Halloween time, it was pretty much always on TV.
Yeah. At least some version that he'd been in, because there were so many.
Exactly.
Because it wasn't so much that they just remade the same Dracula over and over again.
Right.
It was just they wrote a new Dracula movie, and he would just be Dracula.
Right.
And the same thing with the Frankenstein movies, is Peter Cushing would play Dr. Frankenstein, and, the movie would end, and then he, the next one would pick up with him in hiding somewhere, posing as a different doctor, but it was always Dr. Frankenstein. So, anyway, I love the movies. I really, they can be slow, but I love the costumes. I love the sets, and oftentimes, you're in England, so if you need a Victorian home, well, you just go find a Victorian home. Well, if you needed the English countryside, well, you just walked outside.
Because it was there.
It was there, yeah. So, now what I didn't realize though, when we're watching the Hammer movies, I knew that Peter Cushing was from Star Wars, but what I didn't know, there were other Star Wars characters also in those movies.
Probably not surprising.
Uh-huh.
While we may not recognize it, certainly the Star Wars films were filled with British actors.
Oh, absolutely, because they were filmed in Elstree Studios in England.
Right, yeah.
Sir Alec Guinness, of course, was one of the big ones. But yeah, plenty of British actors in there.
Right.
So now, in a movie, once again, Christopher Lee, it was called Scars of Dracula.
Okay.
And in it, of course, like in every one of those old horror movies, there's some torch-bearing mob.
Right.
And in one of them, there's a farmer who's kind of leading he's leading the mob. And if you look at the monitor over here, he's right there.
Okay.
And it's a guy, his name was Morris Bush.
Okay.
And now...
Oh, Dengar.
Yes, Morris Bush played Dengar.
Nice. Yeah, it's hard to recognize with the bandaged head.
Yeah, exactly. And of course he had the beard in the other one.
Uh-huh.
So, no, of course that was just a one-off. He wasn't in any others, but there was another character, prominent Star Wars character, who was also in, IG-88. He was in 17 horror films with Peter Cushing. No, IG-88 was in none. But once again, if you look to the monitor again, I'll show you another picture. Because what this is a movie poster.
Uh-huh.
It was a double feature,
Okay.
one being Scars of Dracula.
Yeah.
But the other movie that was shown was called Horror of Frankenstein. I don't know if you can see the monster very well, but even if you could, you probably wouldn't recognize who he was because we never saw this character's face in Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
And now if you'll move one more down, that's another movie that this actor starred in.
Okay.
But he's even more made up.
Uh-huh.
And of course the answer is it's David Prowse.
That's what my thought was.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And who better to play the monster than a 6'6" bodybuilder? Right. This was a time before the internet.
Right.
I had no idea these people were in these movies.
Right.
Because like Peter Cushing I could recognize.
Right.
But David Prowse, even if he didn't have all the makeup on,
right,
I never would have recognized him.
Right.
Because he was always wearing a helmet.
Right.
Now in England, I know that they would have recognized him because he was, I think they called him the Green Cross Man. And what it was, there were public service announcements telling you when to cross the street. You know, teaching kids how. So they all knew who David Prowse was, but I had no idea who David Prowse was. How would I know? You know, and so, you know, we were probably watching these movies, and I had no idea that this monster was Darth Vader.
Right.
So somehow in the 90s, I found out he was in a movie called A Clockwork Orange.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh, really?
Even to this day, I had no idea.
Oh, well, there we go. Yeah, he's
Okay.
in A Clockwork Orange.
Huh.
And for all you children watching, don't rent it.
Yeah.
So...
Not related to Star Wars in
No,
any way.
not at all.
David Prowse.
Yeah, you might catch a couple of Simpsons references by watching it, but yeah, don't...
It's not worth that, though.
Yeah, so anyway, though, I still had no idea who he played in the
Uh-huh.
movie. And so I'm just looking for a tall, bodybuilding sort of a guy.
Uh-huh.
And now if you look at the monitor over here, you know, this is the character. Can you see the guy holding Malcolm McDowell there?
Yeah.
And so I just kind of had to assume, well, maybe that's David Prowse.
Right.
But I had no idea.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't until the internet that I found out that I was actually correct. That is David Prowse.
That is David Prowse. Interesting.
But like I say, I had no idea.
Huh.
There was no way to find out. Now with the Hammer horror, you know, I loved that I loved the sets. I loved everything. And like I say, a lot of the effects were actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, there was one movie that I remember watching, and I swear you were with me. But once again, you were really young, I was young, you were younger than me, you're 2 years younger than me.
Right.
But it was a Frankenstein movie, because it was Dr. Frankenstein. It was Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, right.
And he was masquerading as someone else, so people didn't know he was Dr. Frankenstein. But because he was wealthy as a doctor, he was volunteering in, you know, like homeless shelters and giving medical care to people who couldn't afford it. And, you know, so he'd go in and he'd, you know, help these homeless people. And so first you're confused as to, you know it's got to be Dr. Frankenstein because it's Peter Cushing.
Right.
But yet you don't understand what's going on. And then I remember he was helping someone who had a tattoo on his arm.
Okay.
And he comments to them, you know, I'm really sorry, but your arm is actually going gangrene. I'm going to have to amputate it. And so he'd then amputate the arm. And like another scene where he told someone that your eyes, you know, you've got something wrong, I have to remove your eyes.
Gotcha.
And ultimately you can see where this is going.
Right.
Because what happens is then we see in the laboratory,
Frankenstein's monster.
yeah, or at least he's putting the pieces together, and you see the tattooed arm.
Okay.
And he's got them in like formaldehyde. You know, and so, you know, keeping them alive. And now the bad special effect is when he had the eyes.
Okay.
Now, so you've got these two eyeballs and the optic nerve coming off the back. You know, when he starts shooting electricity through them, and he says, now watch this. You know, when he lights a torch and he moves it and the eyes follow the torch.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, eyes don't do that, you know, unless they're hooked onto muscles, you know. But really, I really still thought this movie was just cool. I loved it. I remember this, and it really left an impression in my mind that that was a cool concept for Frankenstein. But I had no idea what the movie was. Never knew. And, you know, even in the 90s when the internet now started coming into play, I was typing in, you know, list of Hammer horror movies. I could find a list, but had no idea what it was. And typing in, Frankenstein cutting off tattooed arm, I still couldn't find it. I had no, because the internet was still young. I could maybe find it now, but I couldn't find it then. So anyway, many years later, we had, I'm married at this point in time, and we had on demand. So I'd flip through there and find the horror movies or any other movies, and I found one. It was a Hammer movie, and it was called The Revenge of Frankenstein.
Okay.
And I put it on, and it was it.
Nice.
And it was just, the joys of finally.
If I can.
Yeah.
When we talked about Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers and the frightening aspect of that, there were some things that were very personal to me as far as the frightening factor that I think even ratcheted that up a notch for me.
Yeah.
Shortly after Star Wars came out, and there's probably some record of this somewhere, the Osmond Theater had Darth Vader and a Stormtrooper or two show up.
Really?
And
did you go see the Osmonds?
Not the Osmonds, but I went to the Osmond Theater to see Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers.
Oh, you actually went to see them?
I went. My mom, of all people, took me down to see this.
Wow.
And I think one of the reasons why we went is one of my cousins was attending school there, and I think it was her dad that gave us the bootleg copy. Anyway,
it's funny.
It all comes, it's circular in nature.
Yes, it is, actually.
But I remember my mom telling us, we're going to go down to the Osmond Theater and we're going to see Darth Vader and Stormtroopers. And I'm just thinking, why? I'm a little kid.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that's funny.
That's awful.
Yeah.
And so I was scared to death.
Of course.
Just the idea of who would take their kids to go see Darth Vader.
We're going to go meet Hitler. That's all, yeah. And he's far worse than Hitler.
When you take into account what you see as a child and what you're exposed to, and how, nowadays, you got goofy shirts like these, that make, light of some of the subject matter and kind of lighten it up a little bit. Back then, there was nothing like that. Nowadays, it's Darth Vader with Mickey Mouse ears and, giving a popsicle to a little child Luke, I mean, which is funny. I don't have any issue with that, but it was very different back then.
Now, if it had happened back then, it would have ruined things, actually.
Oh,
we would not have feared Darth Vader when he bought us.
You're absolutely right. But again, who does that?
Who takes their children to meet
their doom? I had older brothers and an older sister who were, watching TV shows and movies that were above my level, being a little kid. Having access to a lot of these movies through cable and through, VHS and other things like that. I saw a lot of stuff. So when you talk about coming over to my house and watching horror movies and things like that, it was pretty rare that I was seeing something for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
When we were watching.
Oh, absolutely, though.
And so I can remember one of my brothers, and I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, he was watching American Werewolf in London with a group of friends. And I just happened to come in where he's having the nightmare about the home invasion. And all these creatures are coming in.
Stormtrooper-looking things.
Yes, that is exactly what I equated it to. When you see all these troopers come in the home, that's what I saw. In my mind, I saw that's Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers. So for me, it took what I saw as the Stormtroopers in Star Wars and made it even that much more frightening.
Yeah. Not
to mention they had been down in the Osmond Theater. I mean, all of those things together. I joke about that a little bit, but all of those things together really took Star Wars to a different level for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where it wasn't just, these Jedis are cool and different things like that. It was frightening.
It created a true emotional connection.
Yeah.
Nowadays we call that branding, but I mean, but that's what it was, though. I mean, it was getting into your, and that's why I'm actually so passionate about it.
Because I was seeing it everywhere. It got to the point where Star Wars, and now I do see it everywhere because it is around me everywhere, but back in there, pretty much everything that I was consuming was viewed through a lens of Star Wars. And
so maybe it wasn't as everywhere as I thought, but it was certainly everywhere I was. And just like Star Wars was everywhere, so was this conversation. We're out of time, and we didn't even talk about what I really wanted to talk about. So, let's end it here, and will you at least stay, and we'll at least talk once we finish the episode?
Yeah, that's fine.
Very good. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was all my pleasure, and I appreciate your willingness to come on the show.
You bet.
Thank you all for watching episode 3 of the Star Wars Generation. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to post in the comment section below. But what I'd like you to post this time around is, we were talking about certain trivia questions here. I want you to post a trivia question. And I want you to stump me without me using the internet. So anyway, thanks for watching. Good night. Good luck.
May the Force be with you. Always.